This is episode 7 of Studio Practice, your no bullshit resource for those things that animate the artist and designer studio. I'm here with
Elliott Earls,
my son, who's going to dance before my talk at the Drawing Center. In the comments on episode 5, Benjamin Santiago asked me to address the realities of balancing my studio practice with my family and role as artist-in-residence at Cranbrook. I touched briefly on these issues in episode 6, but was unable to address them in a practical way, so finally, here we see a tangible, material example of those issues at play. As an example, this past week when I screened selected video work and gave a Q&A at the Drawing Center in New York, I brought both my young son Harry with me and a number of my current graduate students. As a young artist, ballerino, and breakdancer, one of Harry's dreams has been to dance in the New York subway for money. My role as a mentor to my graduate students is among the most important components of my life's work. Look, I'm trying to make it clear through my actions to my graduate students that a particular kind of life in the arts, unlike any other field, makes it possible to pursue integrity of work and material gain without sacrificing family. Look, a life in the arts affords you the specific opportunity to incorporate your family in all aspects of what you do, if you so choose. We're not accountants. We're not accountants. We're not accountants. All right, in this episode, I'm going to discuss a fundamentally sound attitude toward critique process, instrumentalism in art and design, and I'm going to make a few suggestions. But first, we need a little background, and I don't want to lose you. On Saturday evening at the Drawing Center, I screened selected video work, briefly presented related issues, and answered questions. I asked Harry to begin the event by dancing for 1 minute. All right, here we go with the background. Criticism and the critique process lie at the absolute core of the process by which an artist or designer gains power. The fundamental endeavor of the critique process is to call a work into crisis. The physicist David Bohm, in his book On Dialog, makes it clear that in order to enter into a true dialogue, we must suspend our preconceived notions and at least briefly accept the position presented by the other as true. Come on, Elliott, cut through the crap. What is Bohm saying here? I believe that Bohm is saying that the proper approach toward any assumption is to be open to the possibility that it is wrong. In order to grow from criticism, the artist must assume that the critique is correct. All right, what the f am I talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I routinely encounter artists and designers who approach critique as if it is an invading virus, with their intellect and identity, the threatened host. In most instances, when genuine criticism is offered, the vast majority of artists and designers adopt a defensive posture. Look, if you're defensive during critique, you're doing it wrong. Why? Because the fundamental endeavor of critique is to call work into crisis, and the primary way that we advance as artists and designers is to remain open to genuine and authentic criticism. In On Dialog, David Bohm clearly establishes this. Suggestion number 1, the proper approach toward any assumption is to be open to the possibility that it is wrong. Put as simply as possible, suspend what you think you know about your work when it's being criticized. When your work is submitted for critique, you must suspend your preconceived notions and strive to accept the critical position of the other as true. These things might seem obvious, but the goal is not to win critique. The goal is to learn. 1 second. Life around the studio is ridiculously unpredictable. After returning home from New York and while editing this footage together, most of the artists from the new Library Street Collective show showed up at my studio. I spent about the next hour and a half in the studio showing the guys my work. This kind of impromptu conversation is one of the most rewarding things I get to do. Here's the inevitable and obligatory studio snapshot of Cleon Peterson and Patrick of Fail. All right. Where were we? Now these are my words. Powerful work flows from problematic conceptual spaces and conditions, not from resolved spaces. Problems present opportunities. With this as background, during my talk at the Drawing Center, I chose to discuss some of my failures. Chief among them, this mullet. Why discuss my failures in a public forum? Because it's where my work is called into crisis and it's the richest territory for growth. I tried to address what I believe I learned from my failures, not my successes.
Teraz duszę sobie duszę dostal. Yeah, the man of the species has much too much problems with his whole buttocks shit in the US of A.
To look a little bit deeper into what I'm saying, go to my website and search for the lecture, Failure is Not Success. All right, let's recap so far. Remember, my goal is to provide you with a principle-based approach to making work in the studio. Number 1, the fundamental endeavor of critique is to call work into crisis. 2, critique lies at the absolute core of the process by which an artist gains power. 3, the proper approach toward any assumption is to be open to the possibility that it is wrong. And here is your most actionable principle for this episode. Number 4, the goal of critique is not to win. The goal is to learn. Everything I'm discussing means absolutely nothing if evidence of these ideas are not found in the work. Let's take a look at one thing that's popping in my studio. Remember principle 2 from episode 5, evidence of intelligence is found directly in the work? I am completely serious about that shit. I'm not sitting around the studio mouse wanking, drinking coffee, sleeping all day. There'll be plenty of time for that when I'm dead. What are we looking at here? We're looking at the initial underpainting of the object. Don't forget your underpainting. It's amazing how beginning with a strong black or a deep red underpainting can totally transform an object. I think it can be beneficial to see artistic production as cut into 2 primary modes. The first, and unfortunately the most common, is making work when the material, conceptual, formal, and structural issues are already resolved. Here we see an example of the other mode. In this piece, among many other things, I'm trying to work out a new finishing method. I grew up in an Irish Catholic ghetto, went to parochial school and a Jesuit all-boys high school. As terribly unfashionable as this is going to be to say, I remain a theist. The Jesuits are the intellectual mercenaries of the Catholic Church. I was taught, and it's my belief, that God is not threatened by human intellect. I feel deeply alienated from religion as a direct result of the hijacking of religion by right-wing anti-intellectuals. This piece is motivated by those ideas. This piece is produced in an edition of 3, is 18 by 24 by 2, and should be available when finished on minislimited.com. After my talk at the Drawing Center, we spent some time at various cultural institutions around the city and at a few design firms, including the Bruce High Quality Foundation and Karlssonwilker. Thanks to Peter Alberg and the people of the Drawing Center. My friends and killer designers at Karlssonwilker and the Bruce High Quality Foundation. I didn't get to instrumentalism in this episode. Maybe next time. It's mail time. I received a question from Eric Ernschwender and a reply from Christopher Coate. Apparently, Eric has a friend who is always on the verge of making important work, but never quite gets there. Eric wanted to know a few thoughts on how to motivate for that last mile. The first thing that I should say is I composed a response in the comments section of Studio Practice number 6. I'd suggest finding like-minded collaborators to work in very tightly defined periods of time, like a long weekend. Work hard where the explicit goal is to make work and nothing but make work. Make absolutely certain that the experience is fun. Till next time.